$37,476. You heard that right. For 1 year of full-time travel as a couple, we spent $37,476 US. Now, for all of you who are already ready in the comments to tell us that we could have done this for less money, stop! We know.
The point of this video is to share with you our experience of what $37,476 bought us on a backpacking trip around the world. And more importantly, how you can use this information to create your own budget, whether you're going on a 1-month trip, a 6-month trip, a 12-month trip or beyond.
Prepare yourself for real numbers. But before we get into that, if this is the first time you are seeing us, hello, we are Nicole and Nico. We have been traveling full-time since March 2021. Normally on our channel, you will find travel vlogs, but occasionally we make videos all about travel tips and things that we wish we knew before we started long-term full-time travel. And that is the reason we are making this video.
So for some context, during our first full year of travel, we visited 16 different countries across 5 different continents. We aimed for about 100 Canadian dollars a day for a budget, which is around 78 US dollars a day, but we went over. We're the kind of travelers who like to travel pretty cheaply, and we're pretty proud that throughout our full year of travel, we averaged just about 21 US dollars a night for our accommodations.
But we are also the kind of travelers who don't say no to unique, once-in-a-lifetime experiences, even if they don't come cheap. So we also spent $6,983 on activities during our year abroad. And that was on things like hiking to Everest Base Camp, checking out the Bolivian salt flats, and going on a hot air balloon ride in Cappadocia, Turkey.
To make this video really easy to follow, we've broken it down to 3 sections. First, we're going to show you a full breakdown of what this money got us in a year. Next, we're going to show you how you can use this information to create your own budget.
And lastly, we were going to tell you how we funded our 1 year of travel. And hang on tight for this, okay? Because it is juicy.
And if you're just like me, you're probably wondering, boy, I really wish I had this information itemized in an Excel spreadsheet. Well then worry no more, because you'll find a link in the description where you can download a full free expense report of our travels throughout the full year.
Also, a quick side note that unless we state otherwise in this video, all the numbers we give you are going to be in US dollars.
On the screen are the total costs of all the expense categories that we used during our first year of travel. Now obviously these numbers don't mean very much on their own, so we'll briefly describe what this money got us, and as you start thinking about your own budget, you can decide whether or not you think you'll be spending less in a category or more in a category, or about the same in a category as we did in our trip.
First, let's talk about accommodation. So we try to balance out going as cheap as possible while also still having our own private washroom and private room. I'd say about 5% of the time we ended up in a shared sort of hostel dorm style accommodation, but that was just when it was too expensive to get a private space. We also prioritize a kitchen because we do a ton of our own cooking. We tend to book on Airbnb and aim to spend no more than $25 per night on accommodation. Now that of course really depends on what region of the world we're in. So for example, in Georgia, our average nightly cost for accommodation was $21 a night, whereas in Jordan, it was $32 a night. So having an idea of the cost of accommodation, depending on where you're going in the world, what cities and countries you want to visit, is a great way to sort of get a baseline for what your daily spend will be in that country or city.
All right, so let's talk about activities, because you don't want to go off and explore a new country and realize that when you get there, you have no money to do anything. So the most important thing to know about our travel lifestyle is that we like to live as cheaply as we can, day to day, so that when new, unique, and often expensive experiences come our way, we don't let our budget have the final say.
You rhymed.
Okay, what we mean by that is that within reason, we'll often spend a little bit more money on experiences because truthfully, that's the whole reason why we're traveling. So for example, our 12-day hike to Mount Everest Base Camp was $2,562, which is a huge cost during our time in Nepal. But to be honest, to us, it was really important to have this experience and maybe travel for a little less time than it would be to not have the experience and travel for a little while longer. Honestly, that's a personal choice for everyone to make, but it's something that you have to keep in mind when creating your budget, that the activities column cannot be just left blank.
Okay, on to the next category, which is flights. Flights are obviously a huge expense when you're traveling the world. We spent $6,714 on flights for the year. That got us 20 flights each, so 40 plane tickets. 14 of which we helped reduce the cost of by using some travel credit card points. But in our experience, this is the most variable cost among travelers and the easiest way for you to reduce your budget significantly if you are on a smaller budget than we are. So for example, if you stay within one region of the world instead of hopping to 5 continents like we did, you will save a ton of money. To give you an idea of what $6,714 in flights bought us, here's a quick look at our route for 1 year of full-time travel. We started with a flight from Calgary, Canada to Kathmandu, Nepal, and then headed to nearby Colombo, Sri Lanka, where we chilled for a few months before making a huge leap all the way to New York City in the United States, where we basically turned right around and crossed over the Atlantic again to make our way to Tbilisi, Georgia. After seeing Georgia and neighboring Armenia, we caught a short flight to Istanbul in Turkey. Now, Turkey is a big country, so we took internal flights to Pamukkale and then Cappadocia before heading to the incredible country of Jordan. From Amman, Jordan, we made a brief stop in Malta and then turned right back around and arrived in Israel. After visiting Jerusalem and Palestine, we got on yet another flight, this one to Cairo, Egypt, where we took an internal flight to Sharm el-Sheikh to do some phenomenal diving, and then went all the way across the Atlantic for a fourth time and landed in Mexico City. From Mexico City, we actually went back to Canada to surprise our families for Christmas, but we haven't included this flight in these costs because we didn't count our time at home as part of this budget because we weren't traveling. So our expenses and our one-year timeline resume when we leave Canada and fly to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And if you've been to Argentina, you know this country is humongous. So we took an internal flight to El Calafate, and after overlanding into Chile, our next flight was from Puerto Natales to Santiago. Then we jumped into La Paz, Bolivia, before taking the final flight of the first year of our journey, which brought us to Quito, Ecuador. So if you are creating a budget for a trip that has fewer continents or countries on it, remember that that will significantly reduce the cost of your trip.
So then there's also the cost of food and drink, which is also highly variable depending on what country you're in. So for example, our daily food budget in Armenia was averaging to be about 23 US dollars a day, whereas in Bolivia, we were both eating for like 15 US dollars a day. Earlier when we were talking about accommodations, we mentioned that we always prefer a place with a kitchen, and that's because we like to cook our food all the time. We probably make our meals maybe 80% of the time that we're on the road. The remainder 20% of the meals that we have are at restaurants.
Yeah.
And this has saved us a ton of money when we make our own food, because if I recall correctly, it was $2,392 that we spent on groceries for 80% of our food, as compared to $3,515 that we spent on eating out of restaurants for the remainder 20%. So there's lots of savings to be had if you make your own meals. If you're not into cooking, we totally understand that. We suggest at least getting your own breakfast. Like, you can get milk and cereal if you have access to a fridge, and that can save you a ton of money in the long run. Plus, who likes eating out 3 times a day anyways?
It gets old so fast. Okay, so we are going to talk about COVID-related expenses next. Now, keep in mind that we left for 1 year of travel in March of 2021. So we spent $859 on PCR testing during that time. We also spent $2,375, no, I said it wrong, didn't I? $2,375 on arrival quarantines in both Nepal and Sri Lanka, which were required at the time. So hopefully moving forward, you can budget way less money in this category than we did.
So we only have a few more categories left, and thanks for hanging in there. If you have any questions about what we just talked about earlier and also later, of course, feel free to put that in the comments down below. Next category is transportation. Transportation for us is basically anything that doesn't include flights. So this could be private buses, public buses, tuk-tuk rides, Ubers, taxis, everything like that. If you're a solo traveler, expect to pay a little bit more on transportation, because obviously for Nicole and I, when we're traveling in a taxi ride, that's the same whether we're 1 person, 2 people, or more.
Yeah, so budget like not 50% of what we pay if you're a solo traveler, maybe budget something like 60%. Travel insurance can be a really big expense when you are on the road full time, and we actually swapped travel insurance providers partway through our trip to save money in this category. So now we are using SafetyWing. So for $42 per person per month, we are covered to travel anywhere in the world except, of course, the United States, and that includes COVID coverage. We have found SafetyWing to be a super flexible travel insurance provider, which is perfect for our very nomadic travel style. So if you are also in the market for travel insurance, we'll put a link in the description down below, and a heads up, that is an affiliate link if you choose to use it to purchase your travel insurance. Thank you so much.
Our shopping in general category is basically like a catch-all for everything else. So this includes things like replacing worn clothing, getting medication, getting haircuts or hygiene products, things like that. The most important expense we'd say in this category would probably be our visas, or getting tourist visas to the different countries that we travel to. For us in a year, we spent $537, but this could really change depending on what your itinerary looks like, how many countries you're going to, what passport you're traveling on, and what country you're going into.
And finally, our last category is SIM cards and data on the road. So we got a SIM card and data in almost every single country that we visited in our year of travel, and that cost us a total of $321. So SIM cards and data are way more affordable around the world than they are at our home country in Canada, and they're really easy to get.
Okay, that was a lot of numbers. If you want to make this as simple as possible, over the course of our entire 12-month trip, we averaged about $103 a day. So that's for 2 people to travel the world over 12 months.
We hope that by telling you a bit about our travel style, you will be able to gauge whether your travel style will cost you a little more, a little less, or maybe about the same as what we spent for a year of travel as you begin to plan your own adventure. So take that information, keep it in mind as we head into part 2.
If you click this video because you're planning your own trip, then we have 2 simple ways for you to take our budget and transform it into a starting point for your budget. The first way is to basically take our budget and slice it down to whatever situation meets your needs. So if you're a couple looking to travel the world for 12 months with a similar plan that we had, then you don't have to do anything with $38,000. If you're a solo person looking to do the same thing, then I'd cut that in half to $19,000. If you're going for 6 months as solo, that's
Cut in half again.
cut in half again to
500.
8,500 something.
We think.
No, 9,500.
9,500.
Yeah, it gets a little bit confusing. I wish we had like some sort of like matrix that has the number of people traveling and like the amount of times or the amount of months they're traveling for. That would make things like way easier.
And then like just your budget stuck in there.
Yeah.
This is how much you need for whatever circumstance fits you. That'd be cool.
But anyways, this is a super simple way of doing things. We suggest that only using this as a starting point for making your own budget.
Method number 2 is to take our daily average budget for a country and add the cost of round-trip flights from wherever you are in the world. So for example, let's say you're a couple, you want to travel for 2 months in Sri Lanka. Our average daily spend in Sri Lanka was $67 a day. So 67 times 60 will get you the base price, add the cost of flights from wherever you are based from, and poof, you have a budget for visiting one of our favorite places on the planet for 2 months. So if you are interested in the full list of the daily averages for all the countries that we visited in our first year of travel so that you can do the math that we talk about in this method, head over to our Instagram. We've put a post up explaining the averages for each of the countries we visited. Alternatively, you could also, again, download the Excel document that we've put into the description here, which goes through all of our expenses, and then you could do the math yourself.
Because we know you love to do that math.
Come on.
So now that you have a couple new tools, we have 3 pieces of advice that you can use in creating your own budget. The first is, don't go on holidays, live abroad. And by that we mean, you should try your best to eliminate your expenses back home as if you were living abroad. This is way easier to do if you're in a longer trip, but even if you're in a 2-month trip, you should really consider minimizing expenses back home, like gym memberships or car insurance, which are things that could be easily paused or canceled. For us, we personally sold both of our cars, and you can't really cancel a gym membership that doesn't exist, so we consider ourselves ahead of schedule.
Our second piece of advice is that flexibility saves money. So we would suggest not to plan too much. You want to be able to go with the flow and just follow the journey as it takes you. And in all likelihood, you will end up traveling slower than you originally planned when you were planning your itinerary back at home. And honestly, this is a really good thing for your budget. The slower you travel, the less expensive each day becomes. Not to mention that really you seriously want to make sure that you have the space and time to just embrace the freedom that this lifestyle offers you, because there are very few moments in our lives where we have this amount of freedom. So if you've done all the work to get out here, do yourself a favor, don't plan too much, and just kind of see where things go.
Also, just a quick reminder that if you're enjoying this video or you learned something new today, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more of us, subscribe to our channel. This really helps YouTube get our video out to other people who would find it very helpful.
Our final piece of advice is to track your expenses, track your budget. This is probably pretty obvious, but because so much of the world is cash-based, you have to manually track your expenses when you're traveling the world. So to do that, we use an app called Travel Spend. We highly recommend it. We love this app. We pay for the premium version, which gets us even more options for customization of the app, but you can easily organize it into lots of different categories like we've talked about today. You can also check out your daily average spend ongoing, as well as the total cost you have put into the trip. So we'll put a link in the description so you guys can easily find the app if you want to. Again, highly recommend. We absolutely love it.
So how do we fund this? That is a question we get asked most by friends and family and internet strangers. Everybody wants to know how we are funding a trip around the world just like this.
Yeah, and the answer is going to surprise you guys because I am actually a trust fund baby.
And I'm a prince back in the Philippines.
Yep.
No, but seriously, people have the wildest ideas of how we're doing this. But the reality is, it's just hard work, self-discipline, and time.
Yeah, and let's not forget a very healthy dose of privilege. Without privileges like being Canadians, none of this would be possible. So we think it is really, really important to acknowledge that. And with a ton of privilege as our foundation, we started saving and planning this trip 3 years before we left. We had a really hard time finding good information on how much we should budget for a trip like this, which is, the reason we're making this video. But what that led to is basically arbitrarily choosing 100 Canadian dollars as our goal budget per day to travel the world for a year. As you know, we went above that.
Just a little bit. Now, if we're being honest, we have always been good savers all our lives, and our strategy for saving up for this trip was basically to just reduce expenses as much as we can comfortably do so, and then put aside as much money as we can per month until we were ready to go. We were both working full-time jobs in Canada and had zero dependents except for our one and only Furby.
So we did things like keeping our old beater car instead of upgrading it. We lived in a townhouse instead of getting a nice fancy big house with a backyard, which would have been nice. And we basically just minimized all of our spending on anything that wasn't a huge priority to us. Because the reality is, unless you are actually a trust fund kid, you're really not gonna be able to have all the really nice, really expensive things and save up to travel the world full time.
So as you can see, all this money didn't come at once. We just saved at a monthly rate that worked for us. And if you have a similar dream to travel like we did, then we suggest creating a budget, just like we talked about in this video, and then determine how long it would realistically take you to save for that budget.
It might take some big sacrifices like moving into a cheaper apartment for a year, or maybe picking up an extra second job to bring in some more income, but the hope is that you just continue to move towards your savings goal. And just remember that the reward for all of your hard work is 3 months, 6 months, maybe 12 months of just living. No work, just new memories and new adventures every single day.
We hope you found the video very helpful. Don't forget that in the description below, there's a link where you can download the full 12-month expense report. And in case you missed it in a previous video, we have just officially launched a Patreon page.
Yay!
So if you're excited about that and want to see all the awesome perks that comes with becoming a patron, it's in the description below.
The last request we have of you before you click on the next video is to tell us in the comments what other travel topics you would like to hear about from us in a video. So do you want to know about like travel safety? Do you want to know about how much money we're making on YouTube? Do you want to know about our expenses back home in Canada? Or perhaps you want to know about Miko's royal heritage as a Filipino prince? There's lots of cool topics that we could talk about, so let us know what you'd be the most interested in, and we will start planning our next video.
As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. The first is that you're not on holidays.
But our brains are. Yes, and lastly, I forget.
So now that you have a couple new tools,
Those tools you got.
okay. Wait, just